The machine moves silently down a quiet country road, its silhouette unlike anything else in the armored world. It is a creature of contradictions: heavy steel plating paired with rubber tires, a turret that seems to float independently of the hull, and a profile so low it almost scrapes the asphalt. To the casual observer, it looks less like a weapon of war and more like a fever dream of mid-century engineering, a bizarre hybrid that shouldn't work but somehow does. This is the Panhard EBR, a vehicle born not once but twice in the fires of European conflict. Its design features are startling: 8 wheels, 4 of which are solid metal and retractable, 2 drivers sitting back to back, staring in opposite directions, and a revolutionary oscillating turret that changed how tanks were built for a generation. Yet, for all its technical strangeness, the most defining moment of this machine's long service did not happen on a battlefield under fire, but on a solemn, rain-slicked road at a funeral. To understand why such a peculiar vehicle exists, one must look back to 1938, a year when Europe was teetering on the edge of the abyss. The strategic situation was grim. Nazi Germany was rearming at a terrifying pace, its panzer divisions practicing the lightning war that would soon consume the continent. In Paris, the French High Command looked at their own armored forces and realized a serious problem. They possessed thousands of tanks, but their doctrine was stuck in the past. Their light reconnaissance vehicles were fast, but so poorly armed they couldn't penetrate even the thinnest enemy armor. Their heavy tanks, while formidable, were agonizingly slow, designed to support walking infantry rather than maneuver across a modern battlefield. A dangerous capability gap existed between these two extremes. France needed a new kind of machine. The requirements issued by the General Staff were demanding, perhaps even impossible for the time. They wanted a vehicle that could perform long-range reconnaissance missions deep in enemy territory, fight off enemy light tanks, operate in the difficult terrain of North Africa's deserts, and yet still maintain high speeds on European roads. It had to be a jack of all trades, fast enough to run, strong enough to fight, and rugged enough to survive where roads ended. The military announced a design competition, calling on French industry to solve this puzzle. The Panhard Company, a legendary name in automotive engineering, accepted the challenge. The project was led by engineer Louis Delagarde, a man whose vision would shock the conservative military establishment. Delagarde looked at the problem and decided that conventional designs, 4 wheels or tracks, simply couldn't meet the conflicting demands of speed and off-road mobility. His solution was radical. Instead of the standard 4 or 6 wheels, he proposed an 8-wheel configuration. But these were not just 8 ordinary tires. The layout was a masterpiece of dual-terrain logic. The vehicle rested on 4 large pneumatic rubber tires at the front and rear, allowing it to cruise on paved roads at speeds up to 80 kilometers per hour, exceptionally fast for an armored vehicle of that era. However, hidden between these rubber wheels were 4 additional wheels made of solid metal with aggressive steel cleats. On hard surfaces, these metal wheels were raised off the ground, tucked high into the hull to reduce friction. But when the vehicle hit mud, sand, or rough terrain, the pilot could lower them hydraulically. The metal wheels would bite into the soft earth, distributing the vehicle's weight and reducing ground pressure to just 0.7 kilograms per square centimeter. This transformed the car from a high-speed road cruiser into a high-mobility off-road machine capable of traversing the worst mud of the Western Front or the shifting sands of the Sahara. If the wheel arrangement was unusual, the internal layout was revolutionary. Delagarde designed the hull to be completely symmetrical, identical from front to back. Inside, he placed 2 driver positions. One driver sat in the front, controlling forward movement. The second driver sat in the rear, facing backward, with a complete set of controls. This was not a redundancy for training. It was a tactical necessity. In reconnaissance missions, vehicles often drive into ambushes on narrow roads where turning around is impossible. With this system, if the vehicle came under fire, the commander didn't need to shout orders for a 3-point turn. The rear driver simply took control, and the vehicle could instantly accelerate in reverse at full speed, 80 kilometers per hour. This capability gave the Panhard a survivability advantage that no other vehicle possessed. It could escape a kill zone as fast as it entered it without exposing its weaker side or rear armor to the enemy. The symmetry meant that, tactically speaking, the vehicle had no rear. It could fight and move in either direction with equal effectiveness. This feature, combined with its low profile and high speed, made it an incredibly elusive target. Delagard had created a machine that didn't just meet the Army's requirements. It rewrote the rules of armored reconnaissance. The most startling innovation on the Panhard vehicle was not its 8 wheels, but what sat on top of them. The designers were wrestling with a fundamental problem of tank engineering: how to mount a large, powerful gun on a small, lightweight chassis. Conventional turrets require massive internal space for the gun breech to recoil and for the crew to load ammunition. This often results in a tall, heavy vehicle, a lethal flaw for a reconnaissance machine meant to stay hidden. Delagard's solution was the oscillating turret, a concept so radically different from anything else in 1939 that it seemed almost alien. Unlike a standard turret, which is a single rigid box that rotates, the oscillating turret was split into 2 distinct halves. The lower part, containing the crew positions and rotation mechanism, traversed horizontally like any other tank turret. However, the upper part, which housed the main gun and its loading system, was hinged to the lower section. To elevate or depress the gun, the entire upper turret tilted up or down on trunnions. This design eliminated the need for complex internal elevation gears and allowed the gun breech to remain in a fixed position relative to the crew, regardless of the angle of fire. It meant the turret could be incredibly compact, with a low silhouette that made the vehicle much harder to hit. Inside this cramped but efficient space, the commander handled 3 critical roles simultaneously: commanding the vehicle, aiming the gun, and loading the ammunition. This was a heavy workload, but the design simplified the process. The main armament was a 25mm SA-35 cannon paired with a 7.5mm machine gun. While small by later standards, in 1939, this gun was effective against most light tanks and armored cars of the era. The oscillating turret allowed for a high rate of fire and excellent accuracy on the move, as the gun remained stable even over rough terrain. By the autumn of 1939, the prototype was complete. It was a sleek, futuristic machine weighing about 9 tons, powered by an 85-horsepower engine capable of propelling it to 80 kilometers per hour on roads. Its range was an impressive 400 kilometers, enough to operate deep behind enemy lines. But the real surprise was its protection. The frontal armor was 60 millimeters thick, exceptionally heavy for a wheeled reconnaissance vehicle. Most contemporary light tanks had barely half that protection. This meant the Panhard could not only outrun enemy armor, but also withstand direct hits from most anti-tank guns of the time. The French military was ecstatic. The prototype performed flawlessly in trials, demonstrating superb off-road mobility thanks to its retractable metal wheels and low ground pressure. It could race down highways, then drop its steel wheels to chew through mud that would bog down conventional trucks. On May 1, 1940, the French Army placed an immediate order for 600 vehicles, designating it the AM-40P. Plans were drawn up for mass production, with the first units expected to roll off the assembly lines in 1941. It seemed that France had found the perfect weapon for the war that was looming on the horizon. But history had other plans. Just 10 days after the order was signed, on May 10, 1940, the German war machine roared across the border. The Blitzkrieg was unleashed, and the outdated French army was shattered. Panzer divisions sliced through defenses, bypassing strong points and encircling entire armies. In just 6 weeks of fighting, French forces lost 1,749 tanks out of a total force of about 3,000. The speed of the collapse was stunning. On June 22nd, France surrendered. The factories that were supposed to build the AM-40P fell under German control. Production stopped immediately. The dream of a revolutionary armored force died before the first rivet could be driven. In the chaos of the defeat, the fate of the single existing prototype became a matter of urgent concern. Panhard engineers knew that if the Germans captured this advanced vehicle, they would study its secrets and potentially use the technology against the Allies. A desperate plan was hatched. To prevent its capture, the prototype was quietly loaded onto a ship bound for North Africa. It arrived in Morocco in the summer of 1940, far away from the prying eyes of the Wehrmacht. But then, something strange happened. The vehicle vanished. There are conflicting accounts of what occurred next. Some say it was buried deep in the desert sands to hide it. Others claim it was disassembled, its parts scattered across different warehouses or hidden in plain sight as scrap metal. A few believe it was destroyed by its own crew to ensure its secrets remained safe. To this day, the fate of that first prototype remains one of the great mysteries of World War II armored history. What is certain is that the project appeared dead. Back in occupied France, Panhard factories were forced to churn out trucks for the German army. Documents relating to the AM-40P were destroyed or hidden. The revolutionary 8-wheeled armored car seemed destined to become nothing more than a footnote, a brilliant idea extinguished by the harsh reality of war. The summer of 1940 swallowed the Panhard prototype whole. It arrived in the dusty heat of Morocco, a sleek, futuristic machine intended to revolutionize armored warfare. And then, it simply vanished from history. Whether buried beneath the shifting sands to hide it from German inspectors, or dismantled piece by piece and scattered across the Maghreb, its fate remains one of the enduring mysteries of military engineering. Back in occupied France, the Panhard factories churned out mundane trucks for the Wehrmacht, their innovative spirit seemingly crushed under the jackboot of occupation. The blueprints for the 8-wheeled wonder were either destroyed or hidden so well that even the engineers themselves lost track of them. For 4 long years, the idea of a high-speed, heavy reconnaissance vehicle lay dormant, a ghost in the machine of French industry. But ideas, unlike steel, are hard to destroy. When the Allies liberated France in 1944, the country awoke to a devastating reality. Its once proud army was shattered, its equipment either captured, destroyed, or hopelessly obsolete. The armored forces that had been the envy of Europe in the 1930s were gone. To rebuild its military, France needed modern vehicles desperately. They needed something that could patrol the vast colonial territories in Africa and Asia, something fast, lethal, and capable of operating far from established supply lines. In the chaos of reconstruction, Panhard engineers remembered the strange project from 1939. Even without the original prototype or complete documentation, the core concept was too brilliant to abandon. The memory of the 8-wheeled chassis with its dual drivers and oscillating turret sparked a new design program. It was a second birth for a machine that should have died in the defeat of 1940. By 1949, the French military issued a formal requirement for a new armored car. This time, the specifications were even more demanding. The Cold War was beginning to freeze Europe, and the threat of Soviet armor loomed large. The new vehicle had to be faster, heavier, and far better armed than its pre-war ancestor. Panhard dusted off the old plans and proposed an updated design that would become the Panhard EBR, the Engin blindé de reconnaissance, or Armored Reconnaissance Vehicle. The world had changed dramatically since 1939. Tank guns had grown from 37mm pea shooters to massive 75mm and 90mm cannons, capable of punching through thick steel. The old 25mm gun of the prototype was now completely useless against modern armor. To meet this challenge, the new EBR was fitted with a 75mm SA-49 cannon. This was no ordinary gun. It was derived from the famous American 75mm used on the Sherman tank, modified with a high-velocity barrel inspired by the German Panther. It could penetrate 70mm of armor at 1,000 meters, making it a serious threat to even medium tanks of the era. But fitting such a large weapon onto a vehicle designed for speed created a massive engineering headache. The turret needed to be larger, the chassis stronger, and the engine more powerful. The solution to the engine problem became one of the strangest features of the entire design. To keep the vehicle's profile low, essential for reconnaissance, Panhard needed an engine that was incredibly compact, yet powerful enough to move a 13-ton machine at 100 kilometers per hour. They found their answer in a bizarre, flat 12-cylinder, air-cooled engine. This power plant produced 200 horsepower, but was shaped like a pancake. It was only 22 centimeters thick, less than 9 inches. This allowed the designers to mount the engine directly under the turret basket, saving immense internal space. The entire fighting compartment sat on top of the engine, a layout almost unheard of in tank design. While this solved the space problem, it created a nightmare for mechanics. Because the engine was buried deep inside the hull, accessing it for major repairs was impossible without dismantling the vehicle. To perform significant maintenance, crews had to use a crane to lift off the entire turret. In the field, this was a logistical challenge, but it was the price paid for a silhouette so low that the EBR could hide behind a small bush. The suspension system retained the revolutionary 8-wheel layout, but it was refined for the post-war world. The 4 central metal wheels were still there, ready to be lowered hydraulically for crossing soft ground. When raised, the vehicle ran on its 4 pneumatic tires, achieving road speeds that left tracked tanks far behind. The dual driver system was kept intact, allowing the EBR to flee an ambush as fast as it entered one. As the first production models rolled off the line in 1951, known as the EBR 75 model 1951, they were strange beasts. They hummed with the unique sound of their flat 12 engines, their oscillating turrets bobbing as they crossed rough terrain. But they were exactly what France needed, a potent mix of pre-war ingenuity and post-war firepower, a phoenix rising from the ashes of defeat to serve a new republic. The forgotten idea had returned, stronger and stranger than ever. With the arrival of the EBR 75 model 1951, the French army finally had a modern reconnaissance vehicle that could match the speed and firepower of its Cold War rivals. The initial production run saw 836 of these strange, low-profile machines roll out of the Panhard factories. They were immediately issued to reconnaissance regiments and mechanized infantry divisions, filling the desperate gap that had existed since the catastrophic defeats of 1940. But as the 1950s progressed, tank armor was evolving rapidly. The original 75mm gun, while respectable, was beginning to struggle against the thick frontal armor of the latest Soviet T-54s and American Pattons. To stay relevant, the EBR needed more punch. In 1954, Panhard introduced a revolutionary upgrade that would define the vehicle's combat legacy. They mated the agile 8-wheeled chassis with the advanced FL-10 turret, taken directly from the AMX-13 light tank. This wasn't just a simple gun swap, it was a technological leap. The FL-10 turret housed an auto-loading system that fundamentally changed how the crew fought. Inside the oscillating turret were two revolver-style drum magazines, each holding 6 rounds of 75mm ammunition. This meant the gunner didn't have to wait for a human loader to manhandle a heavy shell into the breech. He could fire. The system would automatically eject the spent casing, load a fresh round, and be ready to fire again in just 5 seconds. This burst capability allowed an EBR commander to unleash 12 devastating shots in under a minute, a rate of fire that could wipe out an entire enemy convoy or cripple a tank platoon before they even knew where the shots were coming from. Once the drums were empty, the crew had to retreat to cover and reload them manually from outside the vehicle, a dangerous task in combat, but the initial mad minute of firepower was often decisive. The new gun, the 75mm SA-50, was a high-velocity weapon with a muzzle velocity of 1,000 meters per second. It could penetrate 100 millimeters of armor at a kilometer, enough to defeat the T-34-85s and Sherman tanks still common in many armies, and even threaten the flanks of heavier main battle tanks. This transformed the EBR from a mere scout into a potent tank destroyer. It could now hunt medium armor, using its speed to flank opponents and its autoloader to overwhelm them with rapid fire. But the true genius of the EBR remained its legendary mobility system. The dual-mode suspension allowed it to adapt instantly to the terrain. On paved roads, the driver kept the 4 central metal wheels raised, running only on the 4 large pneumatic tires. In this mode, the EBR was essentially a heavy armored car, capable of cruising at speeds up to 100 kilometers per hour. The ride was smooth and quiet, allowing it to move rapidly across the vast distances of France or North Africa without tearing up the road surface. However, the moment the vehicle hit soft sand, deep mud, or rough cross-country terrain, the pilot flipped a switch. Hydraulics hissed, and the 4 steel wheels with their aggressive grousers lowered to the ground. Instantly, the ground pressure dropped dramatically as the weight was distributed across 8 points of contact. The metal wheels bit into the earth like claws, providing immense traction. In this 8-wheel mode, the EBR could climb steep gradients, cross ditches, and power through mud that would bog down conventional trucks. The transition took only 15 seconds, allowing a patrol to go from highway cruising to off-road combat without stopping. This unique combination of speed, firepower, and all-terrain mobility was put to the test in the harsh realities of the Algerian War, 1954 to 1962. Here, the EBR found its true calling. The conflict was not a conventional war of tank battles, but a brutal counterinsurgency fought in mountains, deserts, and narrow city streets. The enemy was elusive, striking from ambush and disappearing into the rugged landscape. The EBR proved invaluable in this environment. Its high road speed allowed it to escort convoys through dangerous territory, responding instantly to attacks. When insurgents ambushed a column, the EBR could use its dual-driver system to reverse out of the kill zone at full speed, firing its autoloader to suppress the enemy. Its low profile made it hard to hit with rocket-propelled grenades, while its 75mm gun could demolish fortified positions or sniper nests with pinpoint accuracy. The vehicle became a symbol of French military presence in North Africa, patrolling the endless desert tracks and mountain passes. Its ability to operate silently on rubber tires allowed it to sneak up on insurgent positions, while its metal wheels let it pursue them into the wildest terrain. Yet, despite its success, the Algerian War also highlighted the vehicle's limitations. The complex engine was a maintenance nightmare in the dusty heat, and the lack of protection against mines was a constant worry for crews. But for nearly a decade, the strange 8-wheeled car was the backbone of French reconnaissance, proving that Louis Delagarde's radical vision from 1938 was not just a theoretical curiosity, but a deadly, practical weapon. As the 1960s dawned, the Cold War arms race accelerated. Tank armor was becoming thicker and more sophisticated, and the 75mm gun that had once been formidable was starting to lose its edge. Soviet T-54s and T-55s, now widespread across the globe, boasted frontal armor that could shrug off the EBR's high-velocity rounds at combat ranges. To keep their reconnaissance workhorse relevant, French engineers initiated a final, significant upgrade. They replaced the aging 75mm cannon with a powerful, low-pressure 90mm gun, the CN-90F2. This weapon fired fin-stabilized heat, high-explosive anti-tank rounds capable of punching through 320mm of steel. Suddenly, the lightweight, wheeled EBR could kill almost any main battle tank in the world if it hit the right spot. This modernization extended the vehicle's service life by decades, ensuring it remained a credible threat on the modern battlefield well into the late 20th century. The EBR served in the French Army until 1987, an incredible run of nearly 40 years for a design conceived before World War II. During this time, it was exported to nations across Africa and Asia, seeing combat in the brush wars of Angola and Mozambique with the Portuguese army, and patrolling the deserts of Mauritania and Morocco. Its unique blend of speed, firepower, and off-road capability made it ideal for vast, underdeveloped regions where heavy tracked tanks were a logistical nightmare. Eventually, however, age caught up with the revolutionary machine. It was gradually replaced by the AMX-10RC, a more conventional six-wheeled vehicle that prioritized amphibious capability and simpler maintenance. Yet, for all its combat history and engineering marvels, the most iconic moment of the Panhard EBR's existence did not involve firing a single shot. It happened on a gray, somber day in November 1970. Charles de Gaulle, the towering figure who had led Free France during World War II and founded the Fifth Republic, passed away at his home in Colombey-les-Deux-Églises. In his will, the general had left strict instructions. There was to be no grand state funeral, no pompous speeches, and no elaborate military parade. He wanted a simple ceremony, attended only by his family, his neighbors, and his old comrades from the resistance. But the death of such a monumental figure presented a unique problem. How do you transport the body of a man who embodied the very soul of modern France? A standard hearse seemed too ordinary. A horse-drawn caisson felt too archaic. The military needed a vehicle that was distinctly French, humble yet dignified, and capable of navigating the narrow, winding roads of the French countryside. The solution they found was poetic in its symbolism, the Panhard EBR. On the day of the funeral, a specially prepared EBR rolled slowly through the village streets. Its turret had been removed, leaving a flat, open deck where the coffin, draped in the tricolor flag, rested. The aggressive lines of the armored car were softened by the solemnity of the occasion. As it moved past the silent crowds lining the route, the strange eight-wheeled machine seemed to transform. It was no longer a weapon of war, but a chariot of honor. The choice was perfect. Like de Gaulle himself, the EBR was a product of resilience. Born in the dark days of 1940, surviving the humiliation of occupation, and rising again to serve a reborn nation. It was unconventional, innovative, and stubbornly independent, traits that mirrored the general's own character. Thousands of people watched as the armored car carried de Gaulle on his final journey to the village church. Old soldiers snapped to attention, tears streaming down their faces, while younger generations looked on in respectful silence. The image of the flag-draped coffin atop the steel hull became etched into the national memory. It was a fitting end for both the man and the machine. The EBR had begun its life as a desperate hope in the face of invasion, vanished into the sands of history, and returned to become a guardian of the Republic. Now it was performing its last and most important duty, carrying the father of modern France to his rest. The story of the Panhard EBR is a reminder that innovation often follows the strangest paths. Born from the desperation of a nation on the brink of collapse, hidden away in the desert to survive a war, and reborn to serve a new era, this 8-wheeled oddity defies simple classification. It was a bridge between the old world of riveted steel and the new world of autoloaders and oscillating turrets. Most military machines are remembered for their lethality, how many tanks they destroyed, how many battles they won. But the EBR's legacy is different. It is remembered for its resilience. It proved that a good idea, no matter how unconventional, can survive even the darkest chapters of history. And in its final act, carrying Charles de Gaulle, it showed that even a weapon of war can become a symbol of peace and national unity. From the drawing boards of 1938 to the quiet roads of Colombey in 1970, the Panhard EBR traveled a journey unlike any other vehicle. It remains a testament to French engineering, complex, quirky, and undeniably effective. Thank you for joining us to uncover the history of this fascinating machine. If this story moved you, we'd be honored to have you with us again. Until next time, stay curious and take good care.